Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Curious About Our Planet here at Glasgow Science Centre. My name is Gillian and I am so excited to be here today as we are going to be joining Amy and Lizzie through at Edinburgh Zoo, and they're going to be taking us on a tour of the penguins. Now, it will be a live tour. They will be using some technology. If we do have some technical glitches, please do not worry and stick with us. If you do have any questions as well, we're going to be hosting a live question and answer session after the tour. If you're watching us today live, please log on to our YouTube channel and send us any questions that you have. And we promise to do our best to get through as many as we can. So without much further ado, I would like to say good morning, Edinburgh. A big hello to Amy and to Lizzie, and a big thank you so much for having us today.
Hi Gillian, thank you very much for leading us in this amazing programme. So my name's Amy, Lizzie is behind the camera at the moment.
Hello!
And we are here at Edinburgh Zoo in Penguins Rock. But of course, you don't really want to be looking at me on the camera. What you really want to do is see our penguins.
Who are all just running to the other side of the bridge.
So here at Edinburgh Zoo, we've got over 100 penguins. The ones that we've got most of, you'll be able to see here, are our Gentoo penguins. They're the ones with the white strip that goes across their head. We then have our tallest, our king penguins, who you can see right at the front of all of the Gentoos. They've got the orange on the side of their heads. And then the smaller ones that we have here are called rockhoppers, northern rockhoppers in particular. Now we've got a few, you might just be able to make them out on the far side. They're just in a small area at the moment where they've jumped into. Not making it that easy to see them at the moment,
yes,
but we will
can go and visit them later.
A closer look a little bit later on. Now, out of the penguins that we've got here, actually only one type of penguin is endangered, and that's our northern rockhoppers. But the Gentoos and the kings, their numbers are sort of coming down in the wild. They do face a few threats, which we'll talk about in a little while. But before we do that, let's just introduce you to some of our penguins. Now, right in the middle of our Gentoo group, there's one that looks different from all the others. You might not be able to make it out very well on the screen.
See if you can spot him. I might get my finger in the camera. There he is. There we go. Look at that technology.
That individual is Snowflake. Now, Snowflake is a Gentoo penguin, just like the others that are around him. But you might be able to see that he's got a silver back instead of the dark back. Now, all that is a difference in his genes, so in his DNA. So whereas most penguins can produce this really dark colour that's in their feathers, he can't. It's what we call being leucistic. And he stands out. He's quite noticeable at the moment. And also it's getting close to breeding season for our penguins. And he certainly stands out then to the females. So he's quite a hit with the ladies here with our penguin group. Now, our oldest penguin here at the zoo is actually one of our Rockhopper penguins, whose name is Mrs. Wallowitz, and she's about 33 years old. So quite an old penguin. In the wild, they probably wouldn't survive much past the age of 15. But here in the zoo, we've got vets, there's no predators, no food shortages, no pollution, which we'll talk about in a little while. So they can live for much longer here in captivity.
And talking about celebrity penguins, as Amy just pointed out, Snowflake, if you can see the three that are nearest us, the middle one there, I believe that's Nessie. who was famous on our TV programme, if you've been watching Inside the Zoo on BBC Scotland. So Nessie is still with us, still thriving, and still in front of the cameras.
Yes, they are. Just like you guys are curious about the planet, our penguins are very curious about everything that happens around them. So they do like to know what's going on. Now, if you have a look, you may wonder how on earth it is that Lizzie could tell which one Nessie was there. So if we have a look at our penguins, we do use a little bit of a cheat here in the zoo. So I don't work with the penguins every day. So to me, they all look quite a lot alike. But even I can tell who's who. And that's by looking at our penguins, and you might be able to make out that some of them have what looks like a bracelet around one of their flippers. They can be quite difficult to make out sometimes, but that flipper band tells us exactly who is who. So if it's on the right flipper, then we know it's one of our male penguins. If it's on the left, it's a female penguin. And every single one has its own colour combination. So one of our males is called Bumblebee. So his band is on his right flipper, and it's yellow and black beads, just like a bumblebee's stripes. So some of them are easy to tell. We also have one called Terry, who's a favourite of ours, and he has orange and brown beads on his right flipper. So it's kind of like a chocolate orange. Terry's chocolate orange, you see. But other chocolates are available, I should say. We're not advertising them. But here in the zoo, we're getting ready for breeding season. So you might be able to see just over here, we've got these, what look like these big circles. So these go over the nests of our penguins to parasol. But we're still a little bit early for breeding season. But you might be able to see that some of them are pairing up. And you might be able to see some of them starting to bow to each other. So it's something that penguins do called bow hissing. Exactly what it sounds like. They bow when they hiss. And also they shout. They do like to interrupt. But yeah, our penguins here getting close to it. But you might just be able to see that there's a couple in the water swimming along there, showing off perfectly the penguin adaptation of their colouring. So dark on the back, light on the front. If you look down on the water, it's quite dark. So it's very difficult to see the penguins in the water. So it acts as camouflage. And then from underneath the water looking up, it's against a light sky. So the white belly against the light sky means they can hide that way. Thank you. But it's not just hiding from their predators like leopard seals, orcas. They also hide from their prey. So the fish, squid, krill, so like really small shrimp, they hide from all of these.
So that they can sneak up on them.
Of course.
Clever.
But here in the zoo, they don't need to do that. They all get hand-fed.
So what do our penguins like to eat?
Well, amazingly, I'm sure most of the people watching will know that penguins like fish. But here at the zoo, it can cost £165 a day in fish to feed our penguins. That's £5,000 a month. And it's around about 300 fish a day. So they do get through a lot of it, mainly a fish called blue whiting, but also small fish called sprats. And they occasionally get some squid and some krill as well. Sometimes they chuck the fish into the water so they can try and get it. But most of the time, it's hand-fed to our penguins by our keepers. That makes sure that we know who's getting the food. None of them are overeating. But also, if they need medicine, then we can hide that in the fish. And we can know exactly that the right penguin is getting the right medicine. Today was quite a busy day for our penguins because it's vaccination day. So just like we need our vaccinations for things like flu, thank you, and for things like, well, at the moment, COVID, of course, everyone's getting vaccinated for. Well, our penguins need to be vaccinated against diseases that may affect them. So different types of flu, different types of lung problems, just to make sure that they can all stay healthy. And it happens once a year, and today is the day. So that's why they were all over the other side, and now they've run back through here, because you might be able to see in the distance our keepers and vets. They're all over there collecting the penguins, making sure that they have their jags, and then they'll put them back into the enclosure. So lots and lots going on today.
So shall we go and visit our rockhoppers and talk a bit about them?
Try and
Shall we watch
see
those ones?
No, let's go over to the rockhoppers over here.
Okay.
So
wow.
We've got in our enclosure, so it's the longest penguin enclosure in Europe. We've got the shallow end over there, and then all the way over this way is the deep end. So just like a swimming pool that you might go to. It's great for our penguins. But then we've got a separate area over here. Sometimes it's where we put the new chicks each year. But at the moment, it's where our rockhoppers are put when it's breeding season. So let's go and see what they're getting up to. Now, of course, they're all right up at the top now.
Of course, yes.
Which makes it a little bit more difficult to see them.
If I get up to the bars and pop it through. So would you like to explain why the rockhoppers are up at the top?
So yeah, our rockhoppers, when it comes to breeding, they live up to their name. So they jump up the cliffs, up on the rocks, and the males make their nests there. So the males fight it out over the best nest sites by sort of pecking each other, pushing each other around until they've made up their minds. And then the females come in to join them. So here at the zoo, we try to make it as much like the wild as possible. So the males came into this space first. They raced up to the top where they're sitting at the moment, and they found their nest sites up there. Then the females came in and joined their partners. Now that could be the same one as last year. It might be a new one because we've got some young penguins that are just coming into maturity. They're just becoming adults. But our females have found their mate and have decided on their nest sites. And they just happen to be right up at the top, behind the rocks, because of course in the wild, that's where it would be safest from any predators, protected by the rocks and away from the crashing waves. Now, our rockhoppers, I mentioned, are the endangered species of penguin. So these little penguins are dropping in number in the wild. Now, sadly, there's a few problems that face them. One of them is things like pollution. So plastic pollution, they can swallow that plastic and it sort of bungs them all up so they won't eat. So it can be really, really bad for these penguins. There can be things like oil in the water that they swim through, and that means that they're not waterproof anymore and they can get really cold in the water. But of course, one of the main problems is climate change. So something that is a really hot topic at the moment for everyone, climate change. Now, looking around here at the zoo, you may think, well, there's no ice and snow for the penguins. But not all penguins live on ice and snow. They all live in the south of the world, but some of them live in places like Australia, South Africa, where actually it's lovely and warm. Lots of people go on holiday there to get to the warmth. But it's not those areas that are heating up that's causing the problems for our penguins. It's the water where they catch their food. So the fish, the krill, the squid, like a certain cold temperature in the sea. And as the world heats up with climate change, that water is heating up, and it means that there's less food and the food isn't in the same places because the currents of the water change. That means that our penguins are left with less food. So sadly, fewer penguins can survive. Now, this is having a really big impact on rockhoppers. So that's why they're endangered. Because of the types of food that they eat, they're more specialised. So they can only eat certain types of food compared to some of the other penguins. But these rockhoppers are being hit really hard. And of course, there's nowhere really for them to move to because the oceans are warming up. So there aren't any spaces left where it's the cold water that the fish need or the krill need to survive. So that's one of the reasons why we look after them here in the zoo, to make sure that we've got a population of these rockhoppers. But also we carry out a lot of research, so conservation work out in the wild to find out what's going on, to see what impact humans are having on these animals, and to see if there's anything that we can do to stop that from happening. Now, there's one of our penguins who's up at the back of the enclosure at the moment.
I don't think we can see him on camera, unfortunately.
Who keeps shouting at us. That is our very important penguin. Not that all of our penguins aren't important to us, but he is a definite VIP because he's the only knighted penguin in the world. So yes, it may sound a bit strange that we've got a knighted penguin, but to give him his full title, it is Brigadier Sir Nils Olav III, Baron of Beauvais Island. And yes, that is a king penguin. So he's an honorary member of the Norwegian Royal Guard, the soldiers that guard the king in Norway. And yeah, it all started as a bit of a joke back in the 1970s. They adopted him and made him a mascot. And then every few years they would visit and they'd promote him in the army until he made it to the highest rank that you can be. So he thought, well, I'll have to stop there. But no, they knighted him. So he's the only knighted penguin in the world, good old Sir Nils Olav. And he is quite the diva as well. So he loves attention. And at the moment, he's over near where our gardens team are doing some work because he wants their attention.
Keeping an eye on them, supervising.
Yes.
Should we move back over to the gentoos?
Of course. They're much easier to see.
Yes, we'll see some more penguins than some white ducks.
So we can see here the gentoo penguins sort of gathered together. This is where their nesting site usually is. So getting in there early to find their spots. I'll just move over.
So you can see that some of them are lying down now. They're much more relaxed now. The vets are paying attention to the other side of the pool.
Now, here at the zoo, I mentioned that we try to make things as much like the wild as we can. So you might be able to see some things in the enclosure. Now, these are what we call enrichment. So to try and make the lives of our penguins as interesting as possible so they don't get bored. So things that you might be able to see. So we've got the waterfall there, the beautiful waterfall that they will stand under. We've got a diving board just down to the side. There we go. So they jump off that every now and again. Right towards the back of the pool in the very deep end, there are a couple of floats which are really difficult to see. But they float around in the enclosure and the penguins often jump up onto them and push each other off them, actually, which is always quite entertaining to watch. But also around the edges where the penguins are, you might be able to see that the floor is a bit different coloured in different places. So we make the floor out of different things. So in the wild, they would be walking on sand, they'd be walking on pebbles, on big rocks. So we try to make it as natural as possible here in the enclosure for them. So lots of different things to walk around on.
And the same again, trying to make things natural when it comes to breeding season. So our keepers will get out some nest rings and they will put about in the enclosure lots of different types of nesting material and let the penguins build their own nests. So penguins' favourite nesting material is pebbles, isn't it, Amy?
It is, yeah.
So
they're nice roundish pebbles.
Oh, they're particular about their pebbles, are they?
Oh, of course. You don't just want any old pebble.
And so when they partner up, when they decide that they like each other, the males will bring the females pebbles, won't they, as gifts?
They do, yeah.
Just like bringing somebody a box of chocolates. I think I'd like a penguin to bring me a pebble.
Well, they are very good at it, and they'll go and collect these. But there are only so many pebbles to go around. So it's not always a nice, peaceful area at breeding season, because some of our males are pebble thieves. So they will steal from their neighbours to get the best pebbles. So it's something that we keep an eye out for, and it often shows up on the webcam for our penguins. And a lot of people comment on how cheeky they are in stealing from their neighbours. But it's all perfectly natural. It's what they do in the wild as well. Some of them are a bit lazy. They just don't want to walk to find the pebbles. And some of them, they think their neighbours have got better pebbles than them, so they'll steal them to add to their nest. But yeah, you can see there's a little bit of pecking and things going on, but not too much at the moment. Things are still quite peaceful.
Excellent timing. And then, so we've got just about 5 minutes left. I was thinking maybe we should talk about some of the behaviours that penguins exhibit. So we have a webcam on our Edinburgh Zoo website. You can come and watch pretty much this angle, this view, anytime, day or night that you like. And there are some things that you could look out for when you're looking at the penguins. So, for instance, what two of them just exhibited there, nice and noisily, that is called trumpeting, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So, thank you.
Beautiful timing.
So it's this sort of call. They often call to each other in what we call a colony. So when you've got a group of penguins together on land. And it's just to sort of say, hi, I'm here. There's no danger and things like that. They'll often call to each other if they're in a pair. but also we might be able to see some of them cleaning themselves, so preening. So they use their beaks to do that, and that spreads a special oil through their feathers that keeps our penguin feathers waterproof. Let's have a look. So lots of people ask, when they're walking, why do they put their flippers out? Well, it's for balance. If you can see, they're not the best of walkers, and they've only got little legs, so they sort of wobble from side to side as they walk, or waddling. And so the flippers out just help them to balance as they're moving around.
They may not be the most graceful of walkers, but when they get in the water, you can really see just how beautifully they are able to move.
Amazing swimmers, particularly the Gentoo penguins, who you might be able to see in the pool right now. These are the fastest swimming birds, and they can get up to speeds of around 25 to 30 miles an hour, which is as fast as the cars go past the zoo here. So they can really shift when they need to. Main reasons for swimming that fast are catching food and avoiding being eaten.
Good reasons.
Yep. And they are so good at twisting and turning in the water. And again, that helps them to avoid being eaten by
Hi everyone, thanks for staying with us. We do seem to have an issue with the sound. Luckily, we got to hear the penguins who were in quite good voice today, and we can still see them swimming around. We're trying our best to get the sound back, so please stick with us. It's been really interesting to see and hear what the penguins are up to today. And as our lovely education officers, Amy and Lizzie, were telling us, they've had quite a hard day. They've seen the vet this morning, so it was good to see them relax and get the chance to swim around. Once we get the zoo back, we do have some questions from Annette Street Primary and from St Vincent's Primary. So fingers crossed we'll be able to ask them. We do have a ton of events today, tomorrow and Saturday as part of Curious About Our Planet. So stick with us and check the website to see what's happening over the course of today, tomorrow and Saturday. We've got some on-demand activities and some live things happening as well. So things like this you can tune into as they happen. Other things where you can just have a look when you get the chance to, activities to do for all ages. So as I said, thank you for sticking with us. We do have our questions lined up and we do seem to have the zoo back. Thank you so much. Hello, we can hear you again. Thank you.
Brilliant. So we're back at our penguins and ready and waiting to answer any questions.
Brilliant. And I was just saying it was so nice to hear the penguins are in such good voice today.
They are. That's pretty much usual, isn't it?
Excellent. Well, I'll get started. We do have some questions from, first of all, we'll go to Annette Street Primary. We've got one from Zainab in Primary 6. And Zainab has asked, what can we do to help our environment?
Oh, All right. Well, there's loads and loads of things that we can do to help the environment that we live in, and also that will help penguins out in the wild too. So even things like recycling. So if we make sure that we recycle plastic, that we recycle paper and things like that, it means that it doesn't get out into the oceans where our penguins live. So it means that it can keep them safe from that. But also, when it comes to things like climate change, there's lots of things that we can do. So again, recycling, because it uses less energy to recycle something than it does to make it new. So that's really good for these animals. But things like putting on a jumper if it's a bit chilly instead of turning up that radiator. I know there's a lot of people that might do it, but it's always good to save energy. Maybe getting on your bike or walking somewhere instead of trying to get a lift from mum or dad or whoever cares for you. I know, again, it's easy if it's a wet and windy day to just ask mum or dad or whoever it is for a lift. But think about our penguins and maybe think, I'll walk it instead, just for our penguins. Put your coat on, put your wellies on, and get out into the wild wind and rain.
Even walk like a penguin.
Yeah, why not? You can waddle like a penguin, particularly if it's snowy or icy like it has been recently.
I did read that certainly helps to try that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Excellent. We're going to stick with the Net Street Primary. And again, Noor in Primary 6 has asked something that you did touch on a little bit, but can a penguin survive away from the snow and ice?
Yeah, so there are only a couple of types of penguins that live right on the snow and ice of Antarctica. So the emperor penguins and the Adelie penguins. So those animals do need that really cold temperature. That's why we don't have them here at the zoo. We'd need to have a really big walk-in freezer to be able to have those types of penguins. The types that we have here, the gentoos, the rockhoppers and the kings, live on islands that aren't covered in snow and ice. The weather there is quite a lot like it is here in Scotland, actually, quite windy and a little bit chilly, but not really, really cold. So that's why we have the types of penguins that we do. And then some penguins, as I mentioned, live in really hot places like New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, the Galapagos Islands. So some live in quite hot places. So, yeah, it just depends on the type of penguin you are as to where you live.
I'm glad some of the penguins are used to the wind because we can hear it just now. So I'm going to ask again another question from Zainab in Primary 6. Do penguins have something special to help them breathe under the water?
A very good question. Our penguins actually hold their breath, just like we would have to. So they can hold their breath for a really long time, though. So our gentoo penguins that we can see on the camera at the moment can hold their breath for up to about 8 minutes. So a very, very long time. And the reason that they can do that is because they have a special blood that holds a lot of oxygen, much more than ours does. So that's what they have, but they don't breathe underwater. They just hold their breath.
Excellent. That's a great question. Thank you for those questions from Annette Street Primary. We're going to now ask some from St Vincent's Primary. So I've got one from Sophie, who's in Primary 7-6. And Sophie says that we're all hopeful of reversing some of the impacts of climate change, but she's wondering if we have any backup plans should climate change get worse, and do we have any extreme measures in place for protecting animals?
Wow. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it's a very complicated subject, this, but here at the zoo, at the moment, there's a lot of research being done to see what impact it's having on animals like penguins, or even like the lions and tigers that we have here. It's impacting all of the different species. And we're looking at what can be done, if anything. So with our penguins, I mentioned that these seas are heating up. And if that does happen, it may be that some of the penguins can adapt to eating something else that may not live in the cold water. But this sort of adapting to life can take a really long time. It can take thousands, if not millions of years to adapt to something different. So at the moment, there's a lot of work being done to see if that is possible. Zoos and collections can keep the population alive so that it still exists. But in a world that is changing really quickly, there may not be anywhere that's suitable in the wild anymore for them if things reach a point. But here at the zoo, what we're trying to do is make changes that mean that even in a warming world, so if Scotland heats up to extremes, we're actually looking at ways that we can still keep our animals in a way that would be good for them. So looking at a solar powered cool room for our penguins, so it won't be too hot for them, because they will always have this kind of like that walk-in freezer that I was talking about. So there are things that we can do to make life here suitable for our animals. But in the wild, in a lot of cases, we have to wait and see what the animals will do if they can adapt, because we can't always protect their natural habitat if it's the temperature of the ocean.
Yeah. It sounds like you're doing lots of excellent work there, though, to certainly care for the animals that you have. So thank you for answering that quite a big question there. Rebecca from St Vincent's Primary in Primary 6 is asking, how do you become a zoologist in Scotland? And she's also wondering where she can study and how she can volunteer as well.
Okay, so becoming a zoologist, well, that's what my path was. So I went to university and studied zoology, and I did that. You might be able to tell by my accent, I did that down in England, but there are lots of universities in Scotland that have excellent zoology programs, particularly places like the University of Glasgow. A lot of the people that we have working here actually studied at Glasgow. So I'm sure there are lots of other universities that do it. I hope we don't get lots of complaints from them who've been watching. But I know, obviously, with it being the Glasgow Science Centre, then you'll have involvement with the university over there. And there's a lot of other ways as well. So not if you want to be a keeper, so if you want to work at a zoo and look after the animals, then you can do animal care courses. You can get lots of experience by helping out at maybe your local veterinary surgery, and places like that often offer voluntary positions to help look after the animals, or at some of the places like Dogs Trust or places like that, where you can help by walking animals, looking after the kennels and things. And you get as much experience as possible in handling animals, looking after animals. And you can become a trainee keeper when you're 18, and then you can work up from there. Some people have done a degree and come in from that side. But we also have lots of other people here. So I mentioned our gardens team. So they've got lots of different backgrounds. We've got people who do joinery here. We've got accountants that work at the zoo. We've got people that work in the shops, in the cafes.
And of course, education.
And of course, education, yes. So we've got people from all sorts of different backgrounds that all work here. So there's lots of different ways in. But I would say to volunteer, at the moment for us at the zoo, we only take volunteers that are over 18. We are looking at ways to change that, so keep watching the website. But there are other things that you can do or to get involved in. So there may be conservation organisations around you. I know that we've got a green team in Edinburgh who you can volunteer for and do some practical things to help out in the world around you. So just look for different opportunities, and the more you can get, the better.
Excellent. It sounds like there's lots of ways for St. Vincent. Sorry, this is Maria from Primary 7. She does say that working with animals must be amazing, but there must be hard aspects. And Maria's asking what the hardest thing is about your job.
Well, yeah, working with the animals, there are lots and lots of amazing things that happen. But unfortunately, you know, you get really attached to the animals. You work with them every day. And sometimes, sadly, those animals can pass away. And that, for all of our keepers, can be really difficult, particularly if you've worked with an animal for, say, 20 years. And that animal then dies. So that is one of the most difficult things that the keepers have to sort of live with in that role. But on a day-to-day basis, you know, you have to avoid getting bitten by things, particularly our penguins. They've got very sharp beaks and they twist when they bite. It's very nasty.
Avoid standing in things.
Yeah, there's a lot of poop around, so you've got to do a lot of moving of that and cleaning. You can end up really stinking when you head home after a long day of cleaning, particularly our penguins, because there's over 100 of them, and that's a lot of fishy smelling poo that you have to clean up. But you know, it's all just part of the job, and you take the good with the bad, and it is an amazing thing to be able to see these animals every day and to be able to work with them.
Oh, great. Thank you so much. Again, it's just lovely to hear how the penguins get on day to day, and certainly parts of your role. We do have a question here from Charlie. Charlie's asking, how long is an average penguin's lifespan?
Okay, so in the wild, around about 15 years. Here in the zoo, as I mentioned, our oldest is 33. But generally in zoos, it's sort of around like 25 years old. They can obviously live longer, as we found out with Mrs. Wolowitz. But yeah, it tends to be a little bit longer in captivity.
Great, thank you. A question from Boris the cat. They're wondering how many penguins live in Edinburgh Zoo at the enclosure.
Okay, so we've got, I think, we've got around 96 Gentoo penguins. We've got 26 Rockhopper penguins. And then we've got a small group of king penguins. So there are 5 kings. So over 100. And that number will change in a few months' time when breeding really gets underway.
Excellent, thank you. Emma is asking, what are the penguins' personalities like? I think we've heard from quite a few of them today. And what's it like working with them?
Oh, the penguins have a whole range of personalities, don't they? Just like people do. Yeah. We have several. I think cheeky is probably the overwhelming word for penguins. For instance, we have a certain penguin around who likes to eat things that people may drop in the enclosure or leave lying around. And that penguin is actually now named Mittens because of an incident where he ate some.
Yeah, they can be really curious, and I mean, some of them make it really difficult for our keepers. So when the hose pipes and the squeegees are out, that the keepers use to clean up the poo. They chase the hose pipe, they'll bite it, they'll attack the squeegee. Some of them are just really chilled and laid back, you know, they're not fazed by anything. Most of our king penguins just stand around, not bothering with things. But as I mentioned, Nils, a little bit of a diva, he does love the attention of the keepers and the public. And we've got one of our rockhoppers. In usual times, we'd have the penguin parade where the penguins could come out of their enclosure.
Mm-hmm.
And we used to have one of our rockhoppers, Mr. Green, and he would try and get out every day to do the penguin parade, but get bored part way round, and then the keepers would have to carry him the rest of the way. So every single one of our penguins has an individual personality, but yes, some of them are a lot cheekier than others.
It sounds like they keep you on your toes, certainly. So we're just coming to the last few minutes of the question and answer session. So Elaine is asking, do the penguins actually have any favourite keepers?
They do, yes. So Nils in particular has some favourites. There used to be one of our keepers, Stuart, and Nils adored Stuart. So he would follow Stuart around. He'd trumpet at Stuart. He'd just be like his little shadow. And everywhere Stuart would go, you've got Nils with him. But yeah, they sort of like certain individuals. So some of them prefer the female keepers, some prefer the male keepers, and some of them just don't like the keepers at all and will just run away from them. So yeah, it's you can get some really good bonds with some of the animals that we have here. And Nils now really likes Dawn, who's one of our senior keepers here at the zoo. So he's moved on from Stuart.
Oh, moved on. So we do have time for just one last question, I believe. Yeah. So Marion is asking, and it's on behalf of Samuel from Stowe Primary 3. Did the penguins enjoy the recent snow? I know I certainly did, but did the penguins have as much fun?
Well, they are funny. I had to do a live stream with the penguins when it actually snowed, and they love it when it first arrives. It's something new and exciting. They're chasing the snowflakes, and it's absolutely adorable. And then when it's been on the ground for a few days, they get a bit fed up of it. They tend to fall over quite a lot. They like, if you can see the pool here, down here, this sort of red bit is a slope that makes it easier for them to get out of the pool. They were all insisting on coming out on the hard side and falling back in the water because of the snow. So we have a couple of penguins that you can see whose feathers may look a little bit ruffled, and they're ones that have just gone too quickly, waddled too fast, and fallen over in the recent snow. But yeah, if you want, next time it snows, do keep an eye on the penguin cam, because when it first starts coming down, they are absolutely adorable to watch.
I think that sounds like quite a few people I know as well, enjoying it at first and then falling about in the snow afterwards.
Yeah.
So I think that's all the questions that we have for you today. But as you mentioned, you can log on to the site and you can watch the Penguin Cam 24 hours a day.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Excellent. So we can have a look at the penguins whenever it is you fancy. Thank you so much to you both and to all the team at Edinburgh Zoo for having us today. It's been absolutely wonderful to see and to hear the penguins. I hope they've enjoyed it as well.
I'm sure they did.
Excellent. So yeah, thank you to you. Thank you to the team here at Glasgow Science Centre. It's been a great wee session. We do have loads more going on, and we are coming back to the zoo tomorrow to meet up with the koalas, so we can look forward to that. If everyone can keep an eye on the website, have a look at what's going on. We've got our live events and our on-demand activities. Thank you so much again to you all at Edinburgh Zoo, and thank you to everyone at home, at school, wherever you've joined us for Curious About Our Planet here at Glasgow Science Centre.